Hi everyone, welcome to Mad Knitting. My name is Susan, my pronouns are she, her, hers, and this is my YouTube channel where I talk about mostly knitting and other crafty things that I do. Today is March 14, 2023, and it's Pi Day. Do you all know about Pi Day? Pi Day is March 14, and traditionally, if you want to get super nerdy about it, you celebrate by eating pie at 1:59 in the afternoon because, of course, pi, the mathematical pi, is 3.14159 plus an infinite number of digits. So on the third month, the 14th day of the year at 1:59 p.m., you eat pie. Now, I am making pie for dinner, but it's going to be pot pie. I've decided not to make a dessert pie because I don't have time. Anyway, you can find me elsewhere online as madtownmama. That's my handle on Ravelry, and on Instagram, I am madtown_mama. So that's where you can find more pictures and projects and things that I am working on, should you be so inclined. I have a very busy time at work and a lot going on family-wise. Good things, just a lot of irons in the fire. But it's been about 3 weeks since I last posted a video, so I wanted to go ahead and try and get another episode recorded in between Zoom meetings today before all the projects and other things to talk about pile up too much, because I like to keep my episodes ideally at about 30 minutes. They sometimes are longer than that, but any longer than 45 minutes and I feel like I'm just rambling too much. So I'm gonna get that fit in today. I'm going to start by talking about what I'm wearing. This is called, I think, Watercolor or the Watercolor Pullover. I made it about a year ago and I remember talking about it on the channel back then. But it's a design by Neilan, and it was kind of an impulse cast on, as I recall. The pattern came out and I really liked the look of it, and I had yarn in my stash, and because it's knit with bulky weight yarn, it really went pretty quickly. So for the main color, I used Barrett Wool Co. Home Bulky Twist, I think it's called. And this is sort of a gray-green marled or twisted with a natural color. So that's what I used for the main yarn. And then I had some leftover Northampton bulky from Webb's, which they no longer sell. That's been discontinued. This was left over from other stuff, and I used it for the contrasting colors. And I'm very happy with how it turned out. I did realize, though, a few weeks ago that I was never pulling this out to wear it, even on very cold days. And the reason was because the sleeves, while they seemed to be the right length at the time that I finished the sweater, every time I put this on, the sleeves would ride up. And I am really curious as to why this happens, because I've had this happen a lot with top-down sweaters in particular, or maybe only the kind that have like a round yoke or colorwork yoke design. And I'm curious as to why that is. I tend to wear sweaters that are fitted. I don't think this is too tight. I think this fits me really well, but it's certainly not oversized or baggy. So I'm wondering if just the nature of it being fitted means that it just kind of pulls up over the course of the day. And I personally cannot stand it when my sleeves are too short. I absolutely hate when I'm constantly tugging down on my sleeves. So a few weeks ago, when I realized that's why I was never wearing it, I unpicked the bind off edge from the end of the sleeves and added about 2 inches, I would say, more ribbing, because I had plenty of yarn left over. And if you look really carefully, you can see, I don't know how well it's showing up, but you can kind of see the ridge, because I didn't reblock it or anything. I just put it right back on. You can kind of see where I did that on both sleeves. Anyway, now that I've done that, the sleeve length is perfect. If I need to fold it up to get it out of the way because I'm working in the kitchen or something, I can always just roll up the cuffs. But like this is where it was riding up, and I just generally prefer to have my sleeves down over my wrists to keep me nice and warm. So that's, whoopsie, that's the sweater I'm wearing. I am sitting in front of my piano today It's in the late morning. This is just where the light is best. There's actually some sunshine finally. Our weather has been, it's like a return to winter. We had like 6 inches of snow Thursday night and more snow Saturday night, even though it's almost spring and it's really cold. It was like, I don't know, in the low teens Fahrenheit when we got up this morning, which just seems really cold this time of year, especially since this winter has been kind of off and on, like it's snow and thaw and snow and thaw. Sitting in front of my piano today, and this has been a very busy spot of my house of late. I play the piano, as you might know. It's not my full-time work anymore, but I still do take gigs from time to time, and I have a few things coming up. Something next month, something in May, and also my kids play instruments. My daughter plays piano, my son plays cello, my daughter also sings, and they've had various things that they need me to accompany them on lately. So I've been busy practicing and trying to prepare for all of that stuff on top of everything else. So there's music on the stand behind me. There's a pile of my music over there. There's my daughter's music over there, and my son stores his music on the floor, which kind of annoys me, but we're working on it. We're working on it. Okay. That is all I have to say by way of introduction. I guess the one last thing I will add is that if you have any questions for me about anything, as long as it's appropriate, I will answer them here. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, or I even linked a Google form that I set up just in case somebody doesn't feel like having a public comment. As long as it's appropriate, I will answer. Okay, so I do have some finished things to share with you. First of all, I know in my last episode, I showed you a hat that I had started for my husband. His birthday was on Sunday, the 12th. And I did finish it and I gave it to him, and I think he wore it to work today. So I don't have it here to show you, but I did snap a couple of pictures when we were going on a walk in the snow the other day. So I'll make sure I put them up here. The hat, I used some leftover Cascade Eco Plus, which is kind of a chunky, heavy Aran weight yarn in a dark red color. He requested that color when I asked him what color hat he would like. So I didn't use a pattern. I just cast on 80 stitches with size 10 needles. I worked in knit 1 purl 1 rib until it was nice and tall. And then I did 4 sets of decreases along the top. And it fits him very nicely, and he likes it and he wears it. His birthday, as I said, was Sunday, and we had a bunch of snow on the ground, and it was really cold, and the kids were busy with many things. And of course, we changed our clocks for daylight savings, so we actually lost an hour, and I think he took it personally. He was feeling kind of cheated of his birthday. So he took Monday off, and it was still very cold and snowy, but it's kind of nice. We got outside for a walk and went out for lunch and stuff. So anyway, so that is the first finished object for today. The second finished object, I'm excited about this one. It's a big one, but I haven't even worn it yet. I've talked about this at least twice, I think. This is the Rose and Honey Shawl by Gavriella Treminio. Hello, Gavriella on Instagram. And it is so lovely. I am so pleased that this thing is done. For one thing, it's huge. These last few rows took a long time to finish. As far as wingspan, it goes beyond my finger. See, I can't even hold it up. It goes beyond my fingertips by several inches. So it's pretty big. If I put it on now, I'm sure I'll overheat, because this on top of the sweater I'm wearing, it's going to be super warm. But I am so happy with how it turned out. I highly recommend this pattern. It is easy to follow. It's well written. There's no charts, there's nothing to chart, but you get row by row instructions. So I would just check off every row as I finished it. The pattern changes and often enough that it's pretty engaging, although of course the rows get pretty long at the end. But around the top, there's this cool feature. And then you've got this, I think it's a honeycomb stitch. That's probably why it's called a rose and honey shawl. But you do this by knitting one below with a particular frequency. There are some yarn overs. There are some garter ridge patterns. And it just, you know, she just changes it up every so often. So it's meditative yet engaging, which is pretty much perfect. And the way she writes it, you can, as you get close to the end, you can just kind of keep going until you're about to run out of yarn. If you want it, if you don't want to have like a determined end, which was kind of nice. I got down to my last nugget of the main yarn I was using, because that's what was going to run out first. Let me show. It was this. This is Neighborhood Fiber Company Rustic Fingering in the color Belair, which is a really cool acid green color. And as these rows were getting so long, and as I was getting to the end of the skein, I would weigh it, knit a row, weigh it again to see how much I used up, knit another row, weigh it again. And I went until I figured I had to bind off so that it wouldn't run out. And this is what I've got left. I held two strands together. So the other yarn I held with it was Knitpicks Aloft. And I've got more of this left, but I did get into the last skein. This is the fourth skein that I had. This is a mohair silk blend. This is the color Tarragon. So it's a little bit less bright than the Neighborhood Fiber Company. I think that's a pretty accurate color representation there. But together, you get this sort of bright, scummy green, and when you look at it closely, it kind of glows. I think there is something about the halo of the mohair overlaid with this bright fingering weight yarn that just makes it glow. And I know some people find mohair itchy. Fortunately, I do not. I love it. This is really, really soft and warm, and I think it's just going to be one of my favorite accessories to wear in the wintertime. It's large. I don't know how much I'll wear it out, but you know, I work from home, and having something to wrap around me when I'm sitting in my basement in front of my computer is very, very welcome. So this is the Rose and Honey Shawl by Gavriella, Treminio. Oops, it's inside out. I'm showing you the back side. The back side's pretty too, but the front side's even prettier. And I am just pleased as punch with it. I also, by the way, you know, I like shawls and they're fun to knit, but I don't always wear them terribly often. They slip around, and you know, I'm not always great about knowing how to style them. But also, I tend to knit like one shawl a year, maybe two. And I think it's because when you have a construction like this, this is like top-down triangle shawl, so you're increasing 4 stitches every other row. So by the time you get to the bottom, it just takes, I mean, there were probably 400 stitches I was working at the end of every row. And it was a reminder as to why I don't knit that many shawls. I was just really ready to be done. But it's beautiful and I love it, and I need to post some pictures of it. This qualifies for a few different make-alongs that I'm participating in. I'm not really big into make-alongs, but I really like the ones that are laid back and casual and do your own thing. So the Yarniac Self-Indulgent Knit-Along goes from the December solstice to the March equinox. So it's like a whole season, and it's basically make something that brings you joy. And this brought me so much joy because the yarn was such a pleasure to work with. It just feels so nice, and I love this color. Whether or not I wear this color well is a whole separate question, but I don't care because I really love how it turned out. There's also the Imagine Knitting Make Along that's run by the two sisters from the Imagine Landscapes podcast. I forget what the starting date for that was, but it also ends, I think, at the end of March, so it overlaps quite a bit with the Self-Indulgent Knit Along. And then on top of that, the black knitter, Liz, who has a YouTube channel and Instagram account, was doing a Black History Make Along. So I did start this in February during Black History Month. I didn't finish it during Black History Month, but I don't think that was a requirement for the Make Along. I actually finished this at least a week ago in early March. But one of the yarns I used was from a black dyeing business, and then the pattern by Gavriella. So it qualifies in both of those respects. So I'm very pleased with this, and I just want to hold it and touch it forever. So those are the two, and mohair gets stuck in your mouth if you're not careful. Those are the two finished objects I have to show you. I have several works in progress though. So let me get works in progress. I have several, and I'm gonna start with the oldest ones and work my way up to the most recent. So here's a sweater I started a while ago. I might have started this in September. Early in September, I had surgery to remove my gallbladder, and I had a week off to recover. And during that week, I decided to cast on as many things as I wanted. And I think I may have cast on this sweater at that time. If not then, it was not long after that. And I've kind of picked it up and put it down just as other things caught my eye, or as gift knitting took priority. But this is called Light Ease. It's by Alicia Plummer, and it is a very basic top-down raglan construction. There is really nothing earth-shattering about this design, but it's a clearly written pattern, and I really liked the neckline. I think you can either leave it as is, or you can add this kind of funnel neck that has a drawstring. So it functions a lot like a cozy sweatshirt would in your wardrobe. And I think that's what I'm gonna do because I have plenty of yarn. So I got going on this, and finally last week finished up the body, finished up the ribbing, and bound off. So it looks a little wavy now, but I think that's just because it's not blocked yet. I did kind of a stretchy bind off to make sure that it doesn't pull too tight on my hips, because it's how long is this on me? It comes down to about my hip, the top of my jeans pockets, which is where I like sweaters to hit. I don't like cropped. That's just not my thing. So for the stretchy bind off, the easiest way I know is to knit 2 through the back loop together, and then slip the stitch back on the left needle, knit 2 through the back loop, and do that all the way across. So it works really well as a stretchy bind off without being too distorted. That's in fact the bind off I used for that Rose and Honey shawl, because I didn't want the edge to be tight. So what I have left to do here is the sleeves and that funnel neck. If I actually prioritize this, it wouldn't take very much time to finish, but I've got all this other stuff going, which you'll hear about in a second. The yarn is kind of interesting. I got this on clearance at the Wisconsin Craft Market, which I've talked about before. It's a Berroco yarn. I think it's called Boboli lace. And there is some wool and some nylon. And it's kind of shiny. Like, it's sort of fuzzy and kind of shiny. It looks like a single ply, but I think it's fairly tightly twisted. And, Berroco, they have a lot of yarns that they will run for a while and then discontinue. I think this was discontinued, and that's why they had it on clearance at the craft market. But yeah, it's wool, acrylic, and viscose. So it's not even, there's quite a lot of synthetic stuff in here. But there's also 350 yards for 100 grams for what is essentially a sport weight yarn. So the yardage is pretty generous, and I have plenty of it because like I said, I got it on clearance. So I'll probably have a good chunk left over because I've got about 3 whole skeins left, and I think I've only used 2 and change on this so far. And I'm making, I don't know, it's about a 34-inch bust, which gives me a little bit of ease, but not a lot. So I'm looking forward to having this done. I think it's really cool how it's sort of, the color sort of pools. I feel like the light is glaring on it so that it looks like there's more variation than there really is. Like I'm not alternating skeins or anything. It's got a little bit of the effects of hand dyed, but I think yeah, it's just an interesting kind of yarn. And I had it in my stash for a long time and figured I needed to just use it or give it away, and I'm decided to use it. So that's the first thing. The second thing, also a project I started not as long ago, but I've kind of picked it up, put it down, picked it up, put it down. I've got kind of a plain pair of socks going. I don't remember the last time I showed this on Mad Knitting, but it's been a few episodes now, but I finally finished the first sock and have begun the second. I have alas lost the label. If you're new here, I am not consistent about showing labels, so I hope that doesn't bother you. This is, I think, by Regia. No, it's not by Regia. I'm not sure. It's some discontinued yarn that I got on clearance from Webs, and it's called something about color block. And I got it because there's a little bit of yak in it, and I was interested in that fiber blend, which you don't see terribly often. It's like wool and yak and some nylon. But it's self-striping. But as you can see, the stripes are so wide that you could almost consider it color blocking. I'm not sure where that line is when something stops being a stripe and starts being a color block. I don't know. Anyway, it's enough that I decided to do a short row heel so that the stripes wouldn't get distorted. I'm not using a pattern. I just cast on 64 stitches with size 1 needles. I have a 2x2 ribbed cuff, plain stockinette, short row heel, down to the foot, toe decreases. Just the usual sock construction. That's how I do socks. These are made to fit me, so I suppose I'll keep them. I have plenty of socks in my drawer, but some of them are really starting to wear thin because I wear them all winter long. I go running in them, I go walking in them. So they do wear out, and I will be ready for a replacement soon. And I think these will be nice and warm. Do I have anything else to say about this stock? I don't think so. This is what I work on during meetings. So, like I had a staff meeting this morning and got quite a bit of this cuff done. So hopefully I'll have finished socks to show you pretty soon from that pair. Speaking of socks, we're gonna move into the gift knitting portion of the works in progress now. And these are new things that you have not seen yet, or that I did not talk about because I had not started them as of the last episode. My dad's birthday is in April. Last year, I knit him a whole ass sweater, and it was a labor of love because it was a large sweater and it had cables and it had a shawl collar, and he's a tall dude and he loves it and he wears it all the time, but he doesn't need a sweater every year, and I don't have the bandwidth to knit a sweater every year. But he does love wool socks. And when we were there over the holidays, I found a sock that I had knit him years and years ago. I don't know why they kept it, because it was like completely worn through. Like there was a huge hole, like the size of a dollar coin in the bottom of the foot. Like this was irreparable. So I'm not sure why it hadn't been just thrown out. But I figured, I know he hasn't asked for a pair of socks, but I think he would probably appreciate a pair of socks. So I started him a pair of socks. This is what they look, this is what I've got so far. It's the first one. And these strings are in the way. It's a pretty plain sock. I thought about trying to incorporate more patterning in it, but honestly, socks go better for me when I can just knit stockinette, which is why that sock design I've been talking about for like a year, I still haven't gone anywhere with, because like it just takes bandwidth to knit up another one and make sure the pattern's good and do all the things that you have to do for pattern designing. Anyway, to make it interesting, I did add stripes to the top, but otherwise it's just plain old, plain old. I will show you the yarn. This is Knitpicks Stroll Tweed. And I'm blanking now on the specific shade of brown. This is, you know, you can see it's a dark brown. When my son was little, my son is 17 now, but when he was really little, I remember him asking my dad once what his favorite color was. And my dad answered, I think kind of tongue in cheek, he said dog food brown. I don't know if that's really his favorite color or if he just said it because he tends to wear a lot of like browns and neutral colors. But anyway, dog food brown is a good color for a sock. And I was looking through my sock yarn stash and I thought this was a nice color brown. And I like the tweed, seemed like a good kind of sock yarn for man socks, for a guy like my dad anyway. So that's what I'm using. The contrast stripes are in Oyster Heather, which I just have sitting around also. Now, this sock so far has been knit entirely while I have been sitting as an audience member in various events. Would you like to hear about them? I started it last weekend, so not this past weekend, but the one before, during a youth orchestra concert. So I was knitting this mostly in a darkish auditorium, but I didn't drop any stitches, so that was good. A couple of days later, I went to a film screening. It was a double feature of a couple of short documentaries. The first one's called Breaking Trail. The second one, I can't remember what the second one was, but the subject is the same for both. There's this woman named Emily Ford, who was the first woman to through hike the Ice Age Trail in the winter. She's also a Black queer woman, so that was like an extra big deal that she did this and was successful. The Ice Age Trail is about 1,200 miles. It follows the edge of the last glaciers that were in this state about 10,000 years ago, and it's a national trail that, let's see, it's completely contained within the state of Wisconsin. So it starts in Door County, which is the little peninsula that sticks up into Lake Michigan, and it goes around and ends, I think, in St. Croix, which is kind of in the northwest, like on the border of Minnesota or thereabouts. So that was pretty cool. That whole film, if you ever get a chance to see it, I don't know that it's available for streaming anywhere, but it's really good. And then she got so much attention after that documentary came out that her documentary team decided to follow her as she wanted to cross-country ski over the Boundary Waters last winter. And she was not able to complete that trip because she ran into open water and like there was no way to get across. So her trip ended rather abruptly, but still an incredible story, an incredible journey. And she herself was there to take questions after the screening. It was just a really cool thing. So I got another big chunk of this sock done there. And since then, I've also had to attend a meeting, and I had another concert or something to go to. I don't know. There's been a lot happening, and it's been very nice to be able to knit socks while I'm out and about and in meetings and all those things. So I have until the end of April to finish these, so I am feeling pretty confident that I'll be able to do that for my dad's birthday. We have a lot of spring birthdays in my circle, like my extended family. My husband's birthday is technically not in spring, but it's in March, and then my dad's is in April, and then my nieces both have spring birthdays. So the older one is turning 7 next week. And over the weekend, I got it in my head that I should knit her a sweater. And I thought, if I really push it, I can get this done. So I went into my tub of yarn that I have reserved just for knitting for my nieces. If you watched my Stash Talk video, episode 30, what was that? Episode 33 or 34? That was episode 34. I went through all the yarn that I have collected to make them things. So I pulled out this DK yarn. It is Rowan Softyak DK. I gotten this on clearance from the Sowsier. Because I thought it would knit up pretty fast and I like the feel of it. It's mostly cotton, but there's a little bit of yak and a little bit of nylon in it as well. And I didn't do a gauge swatch or anything. I just cast on the sweater that I had in mind. And the sweater is Snowflake by Tin Can Knits. It is from a collection called The Great White North. And I have the print copy, but you can also buy the patterns individually, digitally. And I cast on. It's called cream, but it really looks gray, I think, because the yak content. The natural color of yak is sort of a gray. So any yarn you get with yak in it will have this heathered look. In fact, this sock yarn that I'm using has yak in it. And you can see that there's a heathered quality to it. It's a little bit more muted than if this was just straight up wool. So this is what I've got so far. I used the cream for the top part. I'm using this light pink where you can really see that gray heathered quality for the main body. And let me tell you, this is a really fun pattern. Of course, the child size goes pretty quick, but you follow a chart for the whole yoke. So it's really easy to just tell yourself, I'm just gonna do another row. Just one more row or just one more pair of rows, because you follow the chart and then you do just plain purling on the way back. And then by the time you're done with that, you switch colors and it's about time to separate the sleeves and you just go straight down the body. So it goes lickety split. By the way, you do the yoke back and forth because there is going to be a button band going up this one raglan seam eventually. So that's one of the things I really like about this design is that little button detail. So that's all good. It was fun to knit. It was going really fast. I mean, this is maybe 3 days worth of knitting. It's just been a delight. However, I was making my way down the body. I was a few inches in. This was early yesterday morning. And I looked at it and I thought, this sweater looks kind of small for a 7-year-old kid because she's turning 7. And remember, I didn't check gauge or anything. So I measured it and checked against the pattern specs. And sure enough, my gauge is tighter than what the pattern calls for and what's on the ball band. So the ball band says you should be getting 5.5 stitches per inch using size 6 needles, which is what the pattern calls for. I'm getting more like 6 stitches per inch. So when I check the measurement across this, and by the way, these are 24-inch needles I'm using, and you can see that the sweater fits pretty much perfectly on these needles. It is not coming out to a size 7 to 8 child. It is coming out to more like a size 5 to 6. I'm not going to start over. I'm not going to redo it. I'm going to finish it and give it to my younger niece, whose birthday is at the end of May, because it should fit her. I like the fabric. I like the feel of it. I think if I used bigger needles, it would be too loose. If I started over and tried to do more stitches, there's no way I would get it done. And I would rather just keep it as is and give this to her sister. Yeah, that's what you get for not checking gauge. I feel like sometimes when I am knitting yarns that are not wool, so like I said, this is mostly cotton that has some yak and nylon. So there's some elasticity to it, but it does not feel the same as wool. It feels like elastic more than like the stretch you get with wool. I feel like gauge is a little more of a crapshoot for me anyway, when I am working with non-wool fibers. And I'm not sure why that is. I'm not worried about it. I like how it's turning out, and fortunately it'll fit someone in the family. So that's where I am with that. One last comment about the pattern. I have commented before that I really don't like it when there is no neckline shaping in sweater patterns, even for children. This is the same for front and back. I mean, you can tell where the front is because there's going to be those buttons, but otherwise the neckline is the same for both the front and back. And I don't think there is a way to alter that. Because of this lace chart, I'm not sure how you would adapt it. You'd have to leave out some of the chart, I think, to get the neck to dip in the front. I just wasn't sure how to alter that. I very briefly considered adding some short rows after the chart, because you do have a little bit of plain knitting between the end of the lace and where you divide for sleeves, but I have found that that doesn't look very good on raglan sweaters. It just, I think it would like stick up in a funny way in the back. Plus, this is a pattern that's been around for a long time, and when I looked at the pattern project pages on Ravelry, there were over 1,100 of them, many for babies and children, but also many for adults, and they all actually looked pretty good. Not all of them were like modeled on people, like there were a lot that were just like a picture of the sweater, so you couldn't necessarily tell what it looked like, but it actually looked pretty good. So I'm just following the pattern and have decided that it's going to be fine, and that it does, for this one, it does not matter so much if the neckline doesn't have shaping to rise it up in the back. But it does make me hesitate. I've always thought I might make this for myself just because I like the design so much, but I'm not sure. That might bug me if I was to wear it. So Snowflake by Tin Can Knits should be finished soon. I have plenty of this yarn. I mean, there's like, this is the ball. This is only the second pink ball, and you can see there's plenty of it left, and I'm just about done with the bottom. And I have 2 whole unused ones left. So that's definitely more than I'm going to need. And I'm not sure yet if I want to do short sleeves or 3/4 sleeves or what. It's mostly cotton, but still I'm not sure that she's gonna wear this much in the summer. So I have to decide about that, but I'm not so rushed anymore. The final project that I have in progress, I don't know. You know, when I realized that that sweater wasn't going to work for the birthday that's coming next week for my older niece, I thought, you know, I've always wanted to make a toy, or I've made them toys before, and I've was wanting to make them toys again, so maybe I'll see if I can do that real quick and get it done. I'm not sure that that's going to get done because, you know, I'd have to like finish it and send it off in time, blah, blah, blah. But I started the project anyway, because if it's not done for a birthday, it may be done for Easter, or just because their auntie decided to knit them something. Anyway, a pattern that I've wanted to make for a while is called Good Bear. It's by Susan B. Anderson. When this came out in 2022, I don't remember exactly when, I was this close to ordering kits for the Good Bear because of course it uses Barrett Wool Co. yarn and they're adorable. And if you watched my stash talk video, you know that I have bought her kits before, but reason prevailed because I have a lot of yarn. Toys like this do not take much yarn. And I thought, Susan, don't go buy another kit. You don't need a kit. You can just buy the pattern and use what you got. So I have the pattern and I went poking around to see what sport weight I had lying around in my stash. And I came up with this. This is Reynolds Whiskey. It's long been discontinued. I knit a sweater. I bought this ages ago to make a different sweater. I bought like all the colors required for something that was an interweave knits. I mean, like 10 years ago. I've had this a long time. Ended up making something else. It's a sweater I wear a lot. And I have quite a bit left over, including 2 partial skeins of this brown plus a whole other skein. But it just seemed like a good color for a bear. So this is what I'm using for the bear. I haven't decided what to use for the clothes. So the bear has, I should post pictures up here because this isn't in color, but the bear has a little hat and a little sweater and little pants. So conceivably I could use 3 separate contrasting colors for the clothes, and I haven't decided what those will be yet. But I found light gray left over from something else that I will use for the nose. That hardly takes any at all. And what I have so far are 2 legs. They need to be stuffed. I have to stuff them, and then I don't know what's next. I guess you pick up stitches and go on with the body. I haven't really looked ahead too far, but that's what I've got so far. I definitely have enough yarn to do 2 bears. So I think what I might do is 2 identical bears, but like different color jackets and hats and pants so that they can tell them apart. But I don't know. Is 7 too old for like a little knitted stuffed bear? I don't know if it is, but I'm having fun with toy knitting. So that's what I'm doing for now. So that is quite a few works in progress. And that is what I have to share with you today. That's all I have for now. Thanks for joining me.